Did Jared Kushner fulfill the prophecy of Daniel 9:27, which announces that he will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week? What is the relationship between his role as a peacemaker in the Middle East and the ancient prophecies of Daniel? Could he be the Antichrist, the figure of the apocalypse who will unite the nations under a single covenant? In recent days, the world has witnessed a historic event, an unthinkable peace treaty between Israel and Hamas. After years of violence, a permanent ceasefire has finally been declared. International leaders are celebrating the agreement, and world powers are presenting it as the pact that will change the Middle East. And behind all this, one name is once again making headlines: Jared Kushner. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, who in 2020 promoted the Abraham Accords, has returned to the world stage as the main mediator of this new peace pact. His recent statements in Tel Aviv have caused a stir in prophetic circles. Kushner stated, "This is not just a political truce, it is the beginning of a new era for the world." Coincidence or prophetic fulfillment? Dear listener, in this video we'll analyze these surprising events and see if Jared Kushner's role aligns with the figure described by Daniel, the leader who would confirm a pact with many in the end times. Let's get started. Jared Kushner, a man with a serene face, measured words, and a quiet presence, but with an influence that transcends politics. To the world, he is a businessman, investor, and diplomat. To prophetic observers, he is an enigmatic figure who seems to emerge at just the right moment in Scripture. Jared Kushner was born on January 10, 1981, in Livingston, New Jersey, to an Orthodox Jewish family. His father, Charles Kushner, was a powerful real estate developer and philanthropist, deeply involved in the Jewish community in New York. From a young age, Jared was raised in the tradition of modern Orthodox Judaism, attending Hebrew schools and maintaining a strong attachment to his Israelite identity. He graduated from the prestigious Harvard University and later earned a master's degree in business and law from New York University. Before turning 30, he was already running one of Manhattan's largest real estate corporations and had acquired the renowned newspaper, The New York Observer, a medium that allowed him to connect with the United States economic and political elite. But his rise wouldn't be solely business-related. In 2009, Jared married Ivanka Trump, daughter of then-mogul Donald Trump. This union connected him directly to the country's highest power circles. When Donald Trump took office in 2017, he appointed his son-in-law Jared Kushner as a senior White House advisor, giving him direct access to the most sensitive U.S. foreign policy decisions, especially in the Middle East. At just 36 years old, Kushner was appointed to lead the peace process in the region, a decision that caused surprise and worldwide controversy, given the fact that a businessman with no diplomatic experience was heading the most complex conflict on the planet. But what seemed like a mistake turned into a strategic move. Kushner began a quiet, meticulous, and protracted process, based on private meetings, financial agreements, and discreet negotiations with leaders from Israel and the Arab world. For 3 years, he worked away from the spotlight, building a network of trust that broke decades of enmity. His vision was distinct from that of all his predecessors. While other governments sought to impose political solutions, Kushner proposed an economic and regional cooperation approach. He created what he called the deal of the century, a plan that promised prosperity in exchange for stability. With the support of the United States, he offered multi-billion-dollar investments to Arab nations in exchange for diplomatic recognition of the State of Israel. Thus, in August 2020, the unthinkable happened. Israel and the United Arab Emirates signed a historic peace treaty, the first in more than 25 years between Israel and an Arab nation. Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan joined shortly after, cementing a new era of alliances in the Middle East. Suddenly, a young diplomat with no track record had achieved what the most experienced international negotiators had failed to do in decades. The agreement was called the Abraham Accords, a name laden with spiritual symbolism, evoking the biblical patriarch considered the common father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. With that name, the pact not only had political implications, but also a religious connotation. It was a treaty that sought to unite the children of Abraham, Jews, Muslims, and Christians under the promise of a new era of cooperation. The official ceremony took place on the White House lawn on September 15, 2020. There, before the eyes of the world, Jared Kushner appeared alongside the leaders of Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Cameras captured the moment the signatories raised the documents and shook hands. It was then that the international media began calling it the diplomatic miracle of the 21st century. Time magazine included him on its list of the 100 most influential people in the world. The New York Times described him as the man who achieved the impossible, and the UN publicly recognized the agreements as an unprecedented breakthrough for peace in the Middle East. His ability to bring historically hostile nations around the table perplexed world leaders and international relations experts. Some described him as a genius negotiator. Others saw him as the man who achieved the impossible. But in eschatological Christian circles, his figure began to awaken a prophetic murmur. Because the prophecy of the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 27, speaks of a leader who will confirm a covenant with many, bringing with it an apparent peace for Israel and its neighbors. A covenant that will mark the beginning of the final events. Let's note what the biblical account says, and he will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. The similarity between this prophecy and the role played by Jared Kushner did not go unnoticed. After leaving the White House in 2021, Kushner founded his own global investment firm, Affinity Partners, based in Miami, where he maintained discreet ties with Arab governments, particularly Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, and Israel. While the world saw him as an entrepreneur, spiritual observers knew that his name had not yet disappeared from the prophetic scene. Now, the year 2025 has become a key date in the modern history of the Middle East. After nearly 2 years of war between Israel and Hamas, the world finally witnessed a ceasefire agreement that halted the attacks and opened a humanitarian corridor for thousands of civilians trapped in the Gaza Strip. The news was confirmed by the Associated Press and Reuters, which described the event as the start of a new phase of dialogue between the parties. But behind this breakthrough is a name that has once again made international headlines: Jared Kushner. The former White House advisor and architect of the Abraham Accords unexpectedly reappeared in the negotiations leading to the 2025 ceasefire. According to ABC News Australia, Kushner became a key player within the team that presented the peace proposal to the Israeli cabinet. Accompanied by businessman Steve Witkoff, he held direct meetings with Israeli officials and Arab mediators in Egypt, particularly in Sharm el-Sheikh, to work out the final points of the agreement. The Times of Israel confirmed that the two even met with Hamas representatives with Washington's authorization to secure the release of the remaining hostages. The approved plan consisted of 3 main steps. First, an immediate ceasefire supervised by Egypt and the United States. Second, humanitarian exchange, which included the release of 20 live Israeli hostages in exchange for approximately 1,900 Palestinian prisoners. Third, opening international aid corridors and preparing a Gaza reconstruction fund managed by Arab and European powers. On October 13, 2025, Reuters captured images of Israeli families welcoming their loved ones as buses transported freed Palestinian prisoners in the West Bank. It was the most emotional moment of the process. In statements reported by Politico and AP News, Jared Kushner stated that the goal of the agreement was not only to stop the war, but to lay the groundwork for lasting stability. He said that the reconstruction of Gaza and the security of Israel must advance at the same time. Neither can exist without the other. Since then, the international press has described him as the most influential mediator of his generation. The New York Times called him the quiet architect of a historic agreement, and Time magazine highlighted his ability to build trust between parties that hadn't spoken to each other for decades. Analysts from the Brookings Institute and the Council on Foreign Relations point out that Kushner's strategy is to link economic interests with political stability, a tactic he already applied in 2020 with the Abraham Accords. In 2025, that same formula has brought dialogue back to a region marked by conflict, although the ceasefire remains fragile and deep differences persist. Diplomats from Egypt and Qatar agree that Kushner's participation was decisive in reaching the current understanding. Today, the world is watching cautiously. The future of Gaza, Israel's response, and Iran's reaction will determine whether this pact can be sustained over time, or if it will be another failed attempt in the long quest for peace. However, the truth is that Jared Kushner has returned to the international stage, and his name, once again, is linked to the event that will redefine the Middle East political landscape in 2025. The agreement between Israel and Hamas, signed in October 2025, sparked worldwide reactions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called it a historic step toward stability in the Middle East. And more than 100 countries supported the resolution promoting the Gaza reconstruction plan, supervised by France and Saudi Arabia. In Washington, President Donald Trump presented the Gaza 2030 project, funded by the United States, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the European Union. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, Benjamin Netanyahu sounded cautious but optimistic. If Hamas keeps its word, Israel will too. Arab leaders such as Mohammed bin Salman welcomed the pact, while Iran rejected it, accusing Washington of manipulating the peace. On the other hand, the European Union defined it as a ray of hope and allocated 12 billion euros in humanitarian aid. The market reacted optimistically. Oil prices fell and stocks rose. And in the midst of it all, Jared Kushner embarked on a diplomatic tour of Brussels, Riyadh, and Cairo, consolidating his image as the broker who turned the tide in the Middle East. 2025 will go down in history as the year diplomacy defied war, and at the center of that achievement remains one name, Jared Kushner. Now, with all that has happened in 2025, the signing of the agreement between Israel and Hamas, the return of the global discourse of peace and security, and the reappearance of Jared Kushner as a central figure, a question resonates in the hearts of many prophecy scholars. Could it be possible that we are witnessing a partial or preparatory fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel chapter 9, verse 26? The sacred text declares, "And after the 62 weeks the Messiah will be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof will be with a flood, and until the end of the war, the devastations will last." Dear listener, these words were written more than 2,500 years ago, and yet today they seem to describe, with chilling accuracy, the political and spiritual climate of our time. The prophet Daniel not only announced the death of the Messiah, but also revealed the appearance of a prince who is to come, a leader who would emerge later from the lineage of power that destroyed Jerusalem in 70 after Christ, that is, from the spirit of the old Roman Empire. This prince who is to come would not be a sword-wielding conqueror, but a political strategist, someone with the power to unite nations, restore treaties, and promise stability to a world in crisis. And this is where the world's eyes once again turn to Jared Kushner. In 2025, his name once again dominated international headlines, not as a president's son-in-law, but as the visible architect of a new diplomatic order. His return to the world stage was no coincidence. It occurred in the midst of a protracted conflict, with thousands of deaths, hostages, and destruction in the Gaza Strip. And at that critical moment, Kushner reappeared as the mediator of the historic pact known as the Middle East Peace and Security Initiative. It was he who toured Jerusalem, Doha, and Cairo, negotiating between Arab leaders and the Israeli government, with the direct support of Washington. Under his mediation, a ceasefire was reached, hostages were freed, and an unprecedented reconstruction plan was launched. Cameras showed him walking among diplomats, greeting ministers, receiving applause at international forums, and the entire world began to see him as the man who achieved the impossible, stopping a war in the Middle East. But for those who study prophecy, these images have an ancient echo. Daniel didn't speak of a religious leader or an emperor, but of a diplomatic prince, a man who will confirm a covenant with many, with Israel and the surrounding nations, bringing a period of peace that will precede the darkest events of the end times. Verse 27 of Daniel chapter 9 states it this way, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Then with the multitude of abominations the desolator will come until the consummation comes, and what is determined is poured out upon the desolator." The Bible describes this leader as a convincing peacemaker, a mediator who will use diplomacy to accomplish what previously seemed impossible. And today that description matches the profile that the world press attributes to Kushner: Jewish, diplomatic, respected by Israel, and accepted by Arab nations. What was once a prophetic text has become a mirror in the news. Daniel's language, covenant with many, peace and security, now fills political speeches, press conferences, and UN resolutions. For the first time, ancient words and modern headlines seem to speak the same message. Theologians John Walvoord, Dwight Pentecost, and Charles Ryrie explained that the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 to 27, will mark the beginning of the final eschatological clock, a peace pact that Israel will accept, apparent global stability, and then the emergence of a global system under a single leadership. Could what we are witnessing in 2025 be a prelude to the prophetic scenario foretold by Daniel more than 2,000 years ago? We cannot say with absolute certainty, but the parallels are so clear, so precise, and so disturbing that to ignore them would be to turn a blind eye to the movement of God's clock in history. Daniel saw that a mediating prince would emerge amidst the devastation, not an armed conqueror, but a political strategist, someone who would rise not from the battlefield, but from the negotiating table, a leader capable of speaking the language of nations, of calming troubled waters with promises of stability and peace agreements. And that, exactly that, is what the world has witnessed in 2025. After months of bombing, thousands of deaths, and a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Jared Kushner reappears as the visible face of a new diplomatic order, the mediator accepted by Israel and listened to by Arab countries. It is the same profile that Daniel described in his vision, a prince who will confirm a covenant with many. The second parallel is the covenant itself. Daniel announced that this leader would confirm a covenant with many, not with one or two peoples, but with a multinational coalition. And that's exactly what the Middle East Peace and Security Initiative represents: an agreement involving Israel, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and the European Union. A pact that promises peace, reconstruction, and regional stability. A treaty that, while not presented as prophetic, fulfills with astonishing precision the conditions Daniel listed. A political agreement among many nations with Israel at its center. Third parallel, a fragile peace celebrated as a global achievement. Daniel warned that this leader's peace would be temporary, a seeming calm before the time of greatest tribulation. And history confirms this reality. No human treaty has ever managed to maintain permanent peace in the Middle East. From Camp David to Oslo, from the Abraham Accords to the 2025 Pact, all have promised stability. But all have ended in tension, rupture, and war. Yet, each attempt feels like a step closer to final fulfillment, as if each treaty were an echo of prophecy, setting the stage for the ultimate covenant spoken of by Daniel. And the fourth parallel, Jerusalem is once again the epicenter of the world. Today, more than ever, all eyes are on that city. International headlines mention it daily, world leaders visit it, and the most influential speeches revolve around its fate. Jerusalem, the city the prophets called God's clock, has once again occupied the center of the global geopolitical scene. What happens there determines the global agenda, influencing the economy, security, and even the faith of millions. Everything Daniel saw is before our eyes again. Therefore, when he wrote, "Devastations will endure until the end of the war," he wasn't speaking of a single conflict, but of a prophetic cycle that would be repeated until the end of time. Every failed peace attempt, every broken treaty, Every mediator who emerges is part of the slow but steady advance toward the final scene that God has already revealed. So, while the world applauds a new chapter of diplomacy, those who know the word recognize that the prophetic clock has moved again. The pieces are in place on the board, the powers are aligned, and Daniel's words resound again over Jerusalem. The people of a prince who is to come. Is this just a prelude? Or are we seeing the first steps of the literal fulfillment of one of Scripture's most momentous prophecies? Only time and God will tell. But one thing is indisputable. 2025 has marked a turning point on the global prophetic stage. The land of Israel is once again at the center of history, and Jared Kushner's name has already been inscribed in that narrative. The land of Israel is once again at the center of history, and Jared Kushner's name has already been inscribed in that narrative. It may not yet be the complete fulfillment of Daniel 9:27, but it is certainly a shadow that foreshadows its nearness, a rehearsal of what is to come. Therefore, dear listener, the year 2025 will be remembered not only for a political treaty or the signing of an agreement between Israel and its neighbors. It will be remembered as the year in which the prophecy began to take shape before the eyes of the world. The speeches of men speak of peace and security, but the echoes of heaven announce that God's prophetic clock has started moving again. Every signature, every pact, every emerging leader, and every attempt to unite the nations around Jerusalem, they remind us that God's word never fails. The world believes it is building its own stability, but in reality, it is preparing the stage for what the prophets predicted centuries ago. History doesn't advance by chance. Geopolitics doesn't move by chance. Everything is predetermined, and each event is a step closer to fulfilling the eternal designs of the Almighty. The question isn't whether Jared Kushner fulfills Daniel's prophecy, but whether humanity is discerning the times in which it lives. Because the issue isn't who signs the covenants, but what spirit is behind them. The world seeks a human mediator, but only Christ is the true mediator between God and men. Earthly treaties offer temporary truces, but the Lamb's covenant grants eternal redemption. Leaders promise peace, but only the Prince of Peace will bring the peace that will transform the earth. Today, as the nations gather, the church must kneel. As the powerful raise their banners, the children of God must raise their eyes to heaven. Because prophecy is not a code to predict the future, but a call to prepare the heart for the return of the King of Kings. So we come to the end of this video. I sincerely thank you for following us to the end. I invite you to share this teaching so that more people may be edified and reflect on the Word of God. See you in the next video, and may the peace of the Lord be with you and your entire family, today and always. May God bless you abundantly.